Former Vice President Dick Cheney has passed away at the age of 84. Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Catrice Nolan. Cheney, who served under President George W. Bush from 2001 to 2009, was a towering figure in American politics, known for his decisive role in the administration's response to 9/11 and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. His family reports that he died Monday night from pneumonia and cardiac disease. Salim Sephardi takes a look back at his life and legacy.
What's going to happen in the long term?
Richard Bruce Cheney forged an identity as a no-nonsense, loyal gatekeeper for George W. Bush, through whom access and influence flowed.
I picked him because he's strong, he's steady, and he gets the job done.
Cheney was a seasoned Washington insider long before becoming vice president. He began his public service career in the Nixon administration and then became chief of staff for President Gerald Ford. In 1978, Cheney was elected to Congress from his home state of Wyoming. He spent a decade there until the first President Bush asked him to serve as Secretary of Defense. After President Bush lost re-election, Cheney became head of the oil services giant Halliburton. It was a job that kept him steeped in foreign policy, and later the job became a lightning rod for his critics. When George W. Bush secured the Republican nomination in 2000, he tasked Cheney with vetting candidates for vice president, but ultimately offered him the job. Cheney's health was a major concern. He'd had 3 mild heart attacks and a quadruple bypass before he was 50, and suffered another heart attack shortly after the 2000 election.
I've got a doctor that follows me around 24 hours a day that comes with a job as vice president.
His health continued to be an issue once he was out of office. In 2012, at the age of 71, Cheney underwent a heart transplant. In the Bush administration, Cheney was considered a hawk who was instrumental in the decision to invade Iraq. Cheney believed history would prove they made the right move.
What we did in Iraq and taking down Saddam Hussein was exactly the right thing to do.
During the second term of the Bush administration, Cheney would find himself at the center of controversy when his chief of staff, I. Scooter Libby, was sentenced to prison in connection with the leak of a CIA agent's name. The president commuted Libby's sentence, but did not pardon him, a move sought by some conservatives. Late in his career, Cheney admitted he differed from many in his party on the issue of gay marriage.
As many of you know, one of my daughters is gay. I think people ought to be free to enter into any kind of union they wish.
In his 2011 memoir, Cheney accused Secretary of State Colin Powell of seeking to undermine President Bush by expressing doubts about the Iraq War. He also said Powell's successor, Condoleezza Rice, misled the president about negotiations with North Korea. Both have disputed the claims. Cheney had no interest in running for president after leaving office, but he continued to be an outspoken voice for the Republican Party. In Washington, I'm Salim Sephardi.
Cheney is survived by his high school sweetheart and wife of 61 years, Lynn. The couple shares 2 daughters, Liz and Mary, and 7 grandchildren. Cheney was often described as one of the most powerful U.S. vice presidents in history. His influence extended across national security, economic policy, and foreign affairs. January 20th, 2001, the nation watched as Vice President-elect Dick Cheney stood on the steps of the U.S. Capitol and took the oath of office, becoming the 46th Vice President of the United States. We roll back to that pivotal moment and reflect on the groundbreaking path he embarked on from that very day.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Richard Bruce Cheney, do solemnly swear.
I, Richard Bruce Cheney, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge, the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
Dick Cheney was born in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1941. He was elected to the House of Representatives for Wyoming from 1979 to 1989. Cheney went on to hold numerous positions in government, including Secretary of Defense under President George H.W. Bush. But he is best known as Vice President under George W. Bush. Many came to see Cheney as a controversial leader who shaped America's war on terror. He was a key figure in sharing intelligence suggesting that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction, reports that helped justify the U.S. invasion of Iraq. After no such weapons were found, Halliburton, Cheney's former company, received several government contracts for reconstruction work, sparking allegations of favoritism and largely damaged his reputation. To the very end, Dick Cheney expressed no regrets, insisting he had done what was necessary in the wake of an unprecedented attack on U.S. soil. Karen Kafa has more.
He was influential, given his long political resume that balanced George W. Bush's Texas outsider image and lack of elected experience in Washington with Cheney's consummate Washington insider status. His time in office was defined by being in the White House with Bush out of town on September 11, 2001. He said the day made him a changed man, determined to avenge the al-Qaeda orchestrated attacks. He became the face and the presumed architect of the Bush administration's war in Iraq and a campaign to enforce U.S. power throughout the Middle East with a neoconservative doctrine of regime change and preemptive war. That made him a very powerful but very polarizing figure. After leaving office, he expressed no regrets.
Still ahead, more on the life and legacy of Vice President Dick Cheney, including hearing from the doctor who cared for him for years.
We have to be willing to say, we can have disagreements, we can have debates, we can have intense debates, but violence cannot ever be part of our discourse.
That's Liz Cheney, daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, who represented Wyoming in Congress during the January 6th hearing. After leaving office, her father returned to Washington to show his support as she challenged former President Donald Trump at the time. Her vote to impeach Trump and her role on the January 6th committee ultimately cost her re-election. But through it all, her father stood firmly by her side.
I have a gay daughter, so it's an issue that our family is very familiar with. We have two daughters, and we have enormous pride.
Dick Cheney was also a devoted father to his younger daughter, Mary. Throughout her life, and especially as an openly gay woman navigating both personal and political challenges, Cheney was unwavering in his support. Friends and family say he always prioritized love and loyalty, standing by Mary through every stage of her life. In a surprising move that crossed party lines, former Vice President Dick Cheney publicly endorsed Kamala Harris during her presidential campaign. Cheney also announced that he planned to vote for her, empathizing that he believed putting the country above partisanship was a responsibility he could not ignore. Political observers noted that the endorsement reflected Cheney's long-held view that leadership and principle sometimes transcend party loyalty. Vice President Cheney's longtime physician is sharing his reflections on the man behind the public persona. The doctor who cared for Cheney for more than 2 decades describes him as a remarkable patient who never let heart disease dictate his life. He says Cheney's determination, openness about his health, and trust in his doctors allowed him to live a full and active life despite decades of serious heart issues.
I was a very, very young doctor when he became my patient, and I basically grew up with him as a physician. Yeah, he's just to say at the very least, he was important to me. So he was a remarkable patient. Vice President Cheney had his first heart attack in 1978. When he was campaigning for his first House seat. He was only 37 years old. And when he had that heart attack, there was nothing that medicine really could do for people with heart attacks except hope they didn't die. And he survived that, and he went on to lead a vigorous life, really in spite of very well-established, very premature heart disease. And in many ways, he was emblematic of what medicine has been able to do over the last half century in terms of treating people with coronary artery disease. So he led this really amazing life where he had every medical breakthrough became available to him at just the right time. Things like bypass surgery and coronary stents, defibrillator, ventricular assist device, and ultimately heart transplant were all being developed in parallel to his disease. He never really allowed the disease to dictate what he could do. My father used to say that it's one thing to have a disease, it's another thing entirely to let the disease have you. He was also never concerned about what people knew about his heart disease. He was very open about it. He was the easiest patient, unbelievably compliant, and I think that's one of the reasons why he was able to live such a long and full life. He told me a lot about the value of a doctor-patient relationship. He placed an enormous amount of trust in the doctors and nurses that took care of him over the years. And trust is a very, very powerful thing.
Still ahead, more on the life and legacy of Vice President Dick Cheney. To help put Vice President Dick Cheney's legacy in perspective, a political analyst who has followed him decades in government shares his insights on the mark Cheney left, both in Washington and across the nation.
Oh, I think for all those decades in government, in Congress, and in business, he'll be remembered primarily for the 2003 Iraq War, which in one way was the pinnacle of American power, and in another way was its downfall. I think there is an irony here. In later years, Dick Cheney would become a vocal critic of Donald Trump for trying to break the American system, a critic in particular of Trump's threat to democracy. For all that criticism of Trump, Dick Cheney was part of an administration, the George W. Bush administration, that opened the way for Trump, because in a way they broke the rules. They broke the rules both before and after 9/11 because they were intent on that regime change in Iraq.
That's it for us today. I'm Catrice Nolan. Thanks for watching.